Project Riese was this project built by the Nazis. And it started in 1943, where they grabbed lots of prisoners of war and they got them to build this giant underground tunnel. Riese stood for giant in German, and this was a giant underground complex built by the Nazis. And in May of 1945, the Russian Red Army approached, and the Nazi gave up and ran away. And in the 1990s, Poland dug and found this tunnel. But we have no idea what these tunnels are for. There's an underground city that could house 100,000 people. There's weapon factories, but what is it for? We don't know. So Die Glocke is this conspiracy theory that alleges that the Germans had a super anti-gravitational weapon that could have changed the tides of war. It's in the shape of a giant clock, and it had abilities like anti-gravitational abilities, had abilities like time travel, and apparently there's this huge conspiracy about it too, that the Germans were in Kenya in the 1930s and grabbed this secret ore, kind of like in Wakanda, and used this ore to fuel this bell that could make them teleport through time. Now it's this crazy theory, but it is something that you're gonna hear often on the internet. And they'll be like, oh my god, you know, the Germans had the clock. You say, no, they didn't have a clock. All they had was angry German people. The Nazi gold train is a treasure hidden in Wałbrzych, Poland, and it allegedly was found by treasure hunters in 2015. Now the thing is that we don't have any proof, there's not pictures of this train, we just don't, well, they say, oh, we found it, but we don't have it, so where's the gold, man? But allegedly this was a treasure that was taken from Jews from all across Europe. All their gold was just put in this train, put all across Europe, and this would be one of these statues of gold would be in this train. This train would be driven into this underground complex, and this underground Nazi base would hold this gold. Now, we don't know. We don't have any pictures. We have never found it. So there's no proof of the existence of such a legendary Nazi treasure. The MS St. Louis. So this was a boat that departed from Habsburg, Germany to escape the Nazis, but the United States, Cuba, and Canada all refused these people to get in their country, and these people were sent to concentration camps. So the story was that this boat was carrying 936 Jewish refugees, and they fled Nazi Germany and arrived to Cuba. And Cuba said, we don't allow Jewish people, we will only allow Cuban nationals. So about 20 Cuban Jewish people left the boat, and one guy tried to commit suicide and he was admitted to a hospital, which allowed him to stay in Cuba. Then the boat would go all the way to Florida to the United States, and the United States government would not say anything. Franklin D. Roosevelt would stay silent, and they would be forced to go to Canada for their last attempt of getting help. And Canada, the Prime Minister just straight up said no. He was listening to this minister of his that was very anti-Semitic, and he was like, yeah, I agree with this guy, and I'm not gonna let any of these Jewish people in. And, well, the boat would go all the way, and the captain of the boat, Captain Schroeder, his last attempt was to crash the ship on the coast of England to let all these immigrants run and escape to England. But England told him, hey, I'm gonna allow some immigrants, was Prime Minister Chamberlain. And Chamberlain would allow about 22% of these refugees in the country. But all the rest, about 700 people, would be left there and forced to go to Belgium and France. These places would later be conquered by the Nazis, and all these people would be sent to concentration camps or even gas chambers. So this was a military operation by the Japanese government that is quite unconventional. So in 1942, the Americans attack the Japanese in the Doolittle raid. And the Japanese public are asking for revenge. And revenge came in the form of fire balloons. In 1944, the Japanese government launches 9,300 balloons, and it follows this flow of wind that would carry the balloons all the way from Japan to the United States. And these balloons would explode all across the American mainland, leading to the revolution of how we deal with fires today. Because of so many fires and so many fire hazards, well, the military would train the fire departments in how to fight fires on a continental basis. And this led to how we deal with fire today, better management, better logistics. And not just that, these balloons would damage the Manhattan Project, which was the nuclear plan to nuke Japan. And they would also lead to many civilian deaths. This was Operation Vegetarian. It was about killing all the cows in Germany during World War II. So the plan was to drop flax seeds infected with anthrax, a powerful biochemical that could spread very easily and kill all these cows. And this test was actually tested in real time in Ginnard Island, Scotland. British planes would drop all these flax seeds and the cows would eat them. This operation was so effective that Scotland would be infected with anthrax until well into the 1990s. Now, it was time to operate this true, terrifying operation of making the Germans vegetarian. But the British were actually occupied with something else called Operation Overlord. And after that, they were like, hey, let's launch Operation Vegetarian. But they succeeded Operation Overlord, and sadly, this operation never had effect. But if it did have effect, it would be absolutely devastating, infecting German cows, and even maybe infecting cows from all kinds of different countries, leading to maybe a mass pandemic of anthrax amongst animals. So the Crypt of Civilization is where we put all the human knowledge, all the human ingenuity into one single box. It was an airtight chamber built between 1937 and 1940 and could only be opened in the year 8113. And this box contains a vast variety of very random stuff. There's beer inside from the 1940s. There's a Emerson radio, there's a mannequin that's male and also a mannequin that's female. There's a huge library of knowledge, of entirety of human history. There's papers containing all the different inventions of that time. Just all kinds of stuff that you can find in the link I'll post in the comments. And there's just a whole lot of stuff, and they sealed it all in this one chamber. And in the year 8113, well, people are going to open it and see what we've invented. The Madagascar Plan was an anti-Semitic policy by Nazi Germany, and their goal was to deport all the Jews to Madagascar. This policy began in the 1930s, where people were already discussing about how to deport the Jews as far as possible from Germany. And Madagascar was a French colony, and they would only have to invade France to grab Madagascar. And in 1940, they defeated France, and that's where this idea was seriously discussed. Now, the Nazis had plans of using the British warships to deport all the Jews from Europe all the way to Madagascar. And they would also supply these ships with very little amounts of food, so that most of these people would die in these ships, leaving only the rest to Madagascar. And there was also a plan to use these Jews as hostages to grab the Jews from the United States of America. Now, this plan never came to fruition because the Nazis never defeated Britain. Aktion T4 was a mass extermination campaign against disabled people, people suffering from mental health issues, and from mental disabilities. This was undertaken by a ministry in Tierlingenstrasse 4, a street in Berlin. And this ministry would undertake vast amounts of extermination programs, and this ministry would pay ministers and doctors to euthanize patients that they deemed unworthy of life. Patients who are unworthy of life were people who were Jewish, there were people who had mental disabilities, there were people who had mental illness. And they would basically inject a needle into these people, and these people would be euthanized and would be killed. And this campaign would end about 70 to 120,000 lives across hospitals in Germany. The Battle of Los Angeles was a battle between Los Angeles and the Japanese army, but you'll see this. There's just like a twist to the story. So in 1942, the Los Angeles air raid system gets activated. They spot something in the sky. So they activate all anti-aircraft defense systems. Because in California in 1942, there was also a Japanese attack by a Japanese submarine. So they were like, let's activate everything and destroy this Japanese invasion. So they activate all air raids, they shoot lots of probe lights in the sky, and they shoot 50 caliber rifles, they shoot 50 caliber cannons, and they start firing anti-aircraft missiles in the sky. Then things start to calm down, they close the air raid system, and they don't discover any debris of Japanese planes. In fact, there was nothing in the sky, and they basically shelled themselves.